It was August 2020. Joanna Elvina moved through the crowded departure hall of London's Heathrow Airport with quiet confidence. Behind her, a baggage cart groaned under the weight of 7 overstuffed suitcases. She was dressed well. She looked like she belonged in business class because she was booked into business class. The Emirates check-in agent barely glanced twice. A passport, a boarding pass, and a polite smile. That was all it took. Elvina was no stranger to this kind of composed performance. In the early 2000s, she had worked as a model and actress. She had dated world champion boxer Joe Calzaghe. She had appeared in music videos. She knew how to carry herself. But today, that composure was being tested. Her phone buzzed. A text from her boyfriend, Jonathan Johnson, an executive recruiter, who had no idea what was really inside those suitcases. "Do you feel okay?" he wrote. "Yes, phew," she replied. It was a lie, because bundled inside those 7 suitcases, vacuum sealed in plastic and bound with rubber bands, were millions of pounds in cash. And Joanna Elvina was about to walk it onto a flight to Dubai. She was part of a network that moved over £100 million in dirty cash out of the UK. They were the cocaine queens, glamorous influencers, and models who became the ultimate solution for the underworld's cash problem. This is the story of the £100 million pipeline, the man who built it, and the massive loophole in airport security that made it all possible.
You are watching Truth Unraveled. Let's dive into the case.
This is the story of Abdullah Muhammad Ali bin Bayat Al-Falasi, a man with powerful connections, a near-invisible operation, and an extraordinary network of unwitting and willing couriers who helped move over £100 million in cash out of the United Kingdom and into Dubai. Al-Falasi was no ordinary criminal. He reportedly had ties to a royal family in the Emirates. His father-in-law had been instrumental in building Dubai International Airport from the ground up, managing customs in its earliest years before the construction boom transformed the city, eventually rising to become Director General of Aviation. When Al-Falasi looked at an airport, he understood it differently from most people. He knew where the gaps were, and there were significant gaps. When luggage passes through airport security in the United Kingdom, the 3D scanners, the same computed tomography technology used at all major airports, are calibrated specifically to detect explosives and dangerous materials. They are managed by airport security personnel, not customs officials. And while those machines can theoretically be configured to identify large quantities of banknotes, that function is simply not activated. Customs enforcement and passenger security operate as entirely separate systems. The result is an enormous loophole, one that Al-Falasi would exploit on an industrial scale. British law requires passengers to voluntarily declare any cash exceeding £10,000 when departing the country. Voluntarily. There is no automatic scan, no mandatory checkpoint, no mechanical process forcing compliance. You are expected to walk up to a customs desk and declare your own contraband. Al-Falasi understood quite correctly that none of his couriers would be doing that. He launched his cash transportation operation from Heathrow to Dubai around 2017. The pandemic would accelerate it dramatically. The first courier Al-Falasi brought into his network through his UK connection was Michelle Clark, an executive assistant based in Leeds who worked for Sky TV and was reportedly considering relocating to Dubai with her husband, a former professional footballer, and their children. Clark moved in well-connected social circles. She had the kind of social trust that made her an ideal recruiter. Al-Falasi arranged everything. He purchased Clark a business class ticket on an overnight Emirates flight from Heathrow to Dubai, with a same-day return. He sent her a text containing a photograph of a letter, an official-looking document that appeared to authorize her to transport cash on behalf of the company he owned called Omnivest Gold Trading. The letter created the impression that this was a legitimate commercial operation. Clark landed in Dubai, was guided by Al-Falasi via text messages and voice notes to declare the cash at an airport office, and met him on the other side. She flew 3 more times in February 2020. In the meantime, Al-Falasi began on January 1, 2020, by personally carrying 11 suitcases, totaling 463 kilograms, out of Heathrow. Upon arriving in Dubai, he declared the equivalent of $850,000. that declaration was, by all accounts, a fraction of what he was actually moving. As demand grew, Clark became his primary recruiter on the ground in the United Kingdom. When COVID-19 shut down the country in March 2020, something unexpected happened to the drug market. It exploded. With workers furloughed, offices closed, and millions of people confined to their homes with nothing but time and anxiety, drug consumption surged. And drugs generate cash, physical, untraceable, undeclared cash. Traditional money laundering routes dried up immediately. The nightclubs, the restaurants, the cash-intensive businesses that had long been used to clean dirty money were shuttered under lockdown rules. The need to move cash out of the country had never been greater. Al-Falasi's operation became the solution. By July 2020, Clark was texting a friend with urgency. She needed 12 more people to work within the network. The job criteria she sent were blunt. Can't talk, trust, and reliable and fit. No formal interview, no contract, just those 4 conditions. A mutual contact put Clark in touch with Joanna Elvina, telling her that Clark worked for the UAE Embassy, a detail designed to lend the operation a veneer of official credibility. The 2 women met for coffee. Clark produced stamped certificates that she described as documentation Elvina would need as a documenter carrier. She offered Elvina £3,000 per trip. Accommodation at a resort in Dubai would be covered until she returned with the empty suitcases. The money was good. The risk, as Clark framed it, appeared manageable. Elvina forwarded a photograph of her passport to Clark and boarded a train from her home to King's Cross Station, heading for Heathrow. Her heart rate was climbing. At a Starbucks inside an upscale shopping area of the airport, she met her travel companion, a 25-year-old woman who had come from a commuter town on the outskirts of London. A black Mercedes collected both women and drove them to a nearby location where the suitcases were loaded into the car. At the Emirates check-in desk, they placed 7 cases, piled high and clearly heavy, onto the conveyor belt. The suitcases moved through the 3D scanner. The software found no explosives. No alert was raised. Nobody checked. Joanna Elvina and her companions settled into their business class seats. Below them in the hold, millions of pounds in cash crossed through British airspace for the last time. The trip went perfectly. 3 weeks later, Elvina made the journey again, this time with her boyfriend, who had grown deeply uncomfortable about the volume of luggage they were hauling. "It's effing ridiculous," he texted. "Talk about conspicuous." They arrived in Dubai without incident. Easy money. Almost too easy. In October 2020, Tara Hannon and Megan Reeves arrived at Heathrow for what was supposed to be another routine trip. Cash detection dogs, trained specifically to identify the chemical compounds released by large concentrations of banknotes, picked up a scent. Hannon was pulled into a side room. She told officers she was going on a girls' holiday. She had £50 in cash. Her suitcases, she said, were simply full of clothes because she didn't know what to wear. Officials opened the cases. Inside, vacuum-packed bags of cash totaling £1.9 million. A search of her home address and her phone records revealed that Hannon, who had been furloughed from her job during the pandemic, had already made 3 previous trips to Dubai carrying a combined total of £3.5 million for money laundering networks. Her texts told a stark story. "OMG, Shell, we've been held," she wrote to Michelle Clark, who was already in Dubai. Other messages revealed how powerfully motivated she had been by the financial reward. 3 big ones with this wage and the next. "My, let's go by," she wrote, imagining what she would do with the money. She called the job a perfect life, a few days in the sun and a few at home. The arrests accelerated. In November 2020, Czech national Jakub Kamarad, 39, was stopped attempting to board an Emirates flight with £1.3 million in his bags. Nicola Easton, 55, from Leeds, a city whose social network had, through Clark, become central to the entire operation, checked in 19 suitcases across 3 separate trips in August and September 2020, declaring a total of £4.6 million. Mohammed Gazilas, 29, from Slough, carried £2.5 million across 2 trips. He was arrested on a return flight to Heathrow in February 2020 after Border Force officers discovered a bag he had lost track of at the airport, containing £431,000 in cash. Beatrice Ayade, 27, checked in 7 suitcases containing £3.4 million and was additionally found to have organized the logistics of a further 16 trips. The scale of what investigators were looking at was becoming clear. This was not a small smuggling operation. The volume of cash suggested connections to the highest tiers of organized crime in the United Kingdom, including, investigators would later determine, the Kinahan Organized Crime Group, one of Europe's most prolific drug trafficking networks. Investigators began mapping the operation from its booking records. Every ticket Al-Falasi had purchased for his couriers, and there were many, could be linked through a single phone number, a single email address, and a shared credit card. In total, 23 other individuals were identified as having traveled on bookings made using the same contact details and payment method. The picture that emerged was methodical and precise. Before each trip, Michelle Clark sent Al-Falasi photographs of each courier's passport. He used those photographs to buy the airline tickets. Always Emirates, always business class on the outbound journey to take advantage of the generous baggage allowance. Couriers returned to London in economy. Al-Falasi paid for everything with his credit card and collected the air miles. Clark paid the couriers from her UK bank account and covered their incidental expenses, including COVID tests, which by late 2020 were required for international travel. On the Dubai side, Al-Falasi managed the logistics of cash collection across the United Kingdom, coordinating pickups from clients around the country. He arranged the counting and packing of the cash, photographs of suitcases stuffed with banknotes, and printed readouts from counting machines would later be found on his phones. He charged approximately 10% of the total value moved. Once the cash arrived in Dubai, he exchanged the sterling notes into gold and local currency through licensed banks and money exchange houses, entirely legal instruments used to launder entirely illegal money. 2021, Abdullah Al-Falasi made what would prove to be an extraordinary mistake. He traveled to London, voluntarily, with his wife and children. The family stayed at an apartment on Belgrave Square, one of London's most exclusive addresses, owned by his wife's family. Around lunchtime one day, investigators knocked on the door. Al-Falasi opened it. Officers entered and seized 3 mobile phones. What those phones contained would bring his operation down completely. The devices held hundreds of messages discussing the collection, consolidation, and transportation of cash. They contained photographs of suitcases packed with banknotes. They held printed readouts from money counting machines. And critically, they contained detailed travel itineraries for individual couriers, with Al-Falasi checking in at every stage of each journey to confirm that the cash had arrived safely in Dubai. He pleaded guilty in June 2022. The court sentenced Abdullah Muhammad Ali bin Bayat Al-Falasi to 9 years and 7 months in prison. Investigators seized approximately £3.5 million in assets, including a Mercedes G63, a Ford pickup truck, and 3 Rolex watches. Tara Hannon was jailed for 34 months after pleading guilty to money laundering offences totaling more than £5 million. Beatrice Ayade was found guilty of money laundering and sentenced to 42 months in prison. Joanna Elvina was found guilty and received a 24-month sentence, suspended for 24 months, alongside 100 hours of unpaid community work. Mohammed Ghazalaz pleaded guilty and received a 15-month suspended sentence with 100 hours of unpaid work. 8 additional alleged couriers were arrested in the coordinated NCA operation in May 2021. One male courier, whose identity has never been publicly released, flew over £4 million in cash out of Heathrow in August 2020. He was never prosecuted. He died by suicide before he could stand trial. Investigators said his phone contained detailed records of the operation and confirmed his role in moving the cash. He was, like several others, someone who appears to have understood only partially what he had become involved in, and who did not survive to explain it. Michelle Clark, described throughout the investigation as the critical link between Al-Falasi and the United Kingdom courier network, is still under investigation. In December 2020, she was arrested aboard a private plane in Zanzibar, off the coast of Tanzania, with approximately $9 million worth of gold. Her husband launched a cryptocurrency company that subsequently sponsored boxing matches held at a Dubai arena. When cash is seized and forfeited through the courts in the United Kingdom, it does not simply vanish through the courts in the United Kingdom. The money becomes the property of the Home Office. A portion is allocated to the National Crime Agency to fund ongoing investigations into serious organized crime. The remainder passes to HM Treasury, where it is absorbed into general public spending, used to fund hospitals, schools, roads, and public services. Over £100 million moved through this single operation alone. That figure represents the proceeds of drug trafficking, violence, and exploitation at a scale that is genuinely difficult to comprehend. This case demonstrates something uncomfortable but important. The infrastructure protecting the United Kingdom's borders from financial crime is not fit for purpose. Cash detection dogs, customs declarations, and reactive investigations are inadequate tools against a sophisticated operation run by someone who understood airport systems from the inside. The 3D scanners at every major airport in the country are capable of detecting cash. That capability is simply not switched on. Al-Falasi exploited a gap that was more policy choice than technical limitation. He moved over £100 million through it. For the couriers, many of them ordinary people fell out in debt or simply tempted by what appeared to be straightforward money. The consequences range from prison sentences to something far worse. For Al-Falasi himself, the operation ended on a doorstep in Belgrave Square, with 3 phones seized and a 9-year sentence to follow. The suitcases by then were long gone. Thanks for watching another episode of Truth Unraveled. Until next time, take care.